How's it going, everyone? And welcome back to Animal Talk Podcast with me, your host, Ryne Ferguson. It is so good to be back. Yep, finally a reboot of Animal Talk Podcast. It has been a very long time, almost 5 years now, started back in 2020. And unfortunately, due to lockdown almost coming to an end and a lot more work that I had to do, I kind of stopped doing the podcasts and then never really picked it up again. But I thought this time it is time for a reboot, and I'm really excited about this reboot. So let's dive right into it because I'm super excited about this episode number 11. And joining me on the podcast for this brand new episode all the way from Cape Town is Ayrton King. Hello, Ayrton. How are you doing?
Hey, Ryan. I'm really good. How are you?
I'm doing really well, thanks. Thanks so much for being on my show. It's really exciting to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's really a great opportunity to chat to you. And yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. I'm super excited about this. And especially the topic. But before we get in depth into this very interesting topic, how I start my podcast with everybody and all my guests is I have to ask you the question that everybody goes, oh, do I really have to answer that? And that is, what is your favorite animal?
Ooh, that can be a difficult question. I think, especially for us animal people. And it's actually one I think a lot of animal people like to ask other animal people. So, but I would have to say, out of all of the species, one that I've always been drawn to is the killer whale.
Oh, wow. I'm surprised by that.
I don't know. There's just something about them. They are really just very majestic, and we sometimes are lucky enough to have them around our coast here in Cape Town. So yeah, I think for many years I've always just dreamed of hopefully one day maybe, I don't know, working with killer whales as well. But
how cool would that be?
That would be, I think, probably a highlight of my career if that does happen. So fingers crossed. I'm putting that into the universe. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. Yeah, and you mentioned, you get them coming to the coast there by you in the Cape, because your water's a lot colder. I'm guessing they'll come down and they frequent that area. But funny enough, it's quite interesting on the east coast of KZN, where I stay. There have been a few sightings of 1 or 2 killer whales, normally in our winter months, so the Indian Ocean is a little bit cooler. And I have a sneaky suspicion they're coming to find a little bit more food. So this time of the year, we've got a lot of aloes that are flowering. And as soon as they start to flower, that's the sign that we've got sardine run starting. So when the sardines come down the coast, you've got all of the different species, pretty much poor sardines being attacked by all these species, from cormorants to sharks to dolphins and killer whales. And the recent footage also seen recently is blue whales. I don't know how.
That's really cool.
They were pretty much pushing into the sardine schools and trying to grab bits and pieces with the sharks as well. So that was really interesting.
I always just find it so amazing. I mean, you think of all the different species that are involved in that and how it also just timelessly just happens, I always have to, we have to wake up in the morning and plan our day, but Meanwhile, this is all just happening out there in the ocean, and it's just does it all by itself.
Somehow they all know exactly when it's happening, which is crazy.
Well, you would think the sardines would work out when it's happening, but
well, you would hope they would. But yeah, it's an amazing experience to watch. I've seen it live, watching them. I've seen the craziness of people everywhere. The bird life is just intense. No one goes into the ocean because there are way too many sharks. But yeah, it's really cool. It just all these different species just coming out of everywhere from the depths and all over the place just to our shoreline.
And the sky, all the seabirds.
I would not want to be a sardine during the sardine run, because you have these sharp beaks diving into the water. You've got to be prepared for that. And then you've got these sharp teeth coming from the bottom, and you've got dolphins pushing in on the side. And now you've got two different types of whales. No thanks. I'm not wanting to come back as a sardine.
Probably the only species that doesn't enjoy the sardine run is the sardines.
Yes, I would 100% agree there. Well, now, seeing as though we're on sardines and it's a fish thing, there seems to be something fishy here. And it's because we're going to be talking about fish training.
Yeah, I mean, so this is a topic for me that's really exciting. I think it's something that's becoming more of a topic in the animal care industry, which is also really exciting. Right. I think a lot of the time, when we think about the care we have to provide to animals in a zoological or in an aquarium setting, often it's always more focused on what is believed to be the more sentient animals. So, the mammals, like your dolphins and your killer whales, and then your otters and your seals. But now it's slowly filtering through that, fish also need just as much enrichment and training and care. And it's something that's really exciting that, we're realizing this, because, I think it just helps us to provide these animals with even better care, when they're in a human care environment.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, it's obviously going to help you in husbandry care and everything that it does for all the other species that we tend to train or are known to be trained.
Yeah, that's always the strange thing is I think there's always just like this line from everything else and then fish. So they always get kind of grouped very separately, and
yeah,
it's, I think, maybe a light bulb moment for us as keepers that, how you would work with any other animal in human care, why can't you do the same and apply the same principles for fish?
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest inspirations or one of the people that inspires me the most, and I think I always speak to all my colleagues about her, is Gabby Harris from Ushaka SeaWorld.
And I was suspicion you were going to bring up Gabby.
I was very, very fortunate to quite a few years ago do at that time we were doing the penguin waddle, where we raise awareness for the plight of the African penguins, and we would walk a long distance all the way from Gansbaai. So that was my first interaction with her. And then over the years, we got more in touch with, training and things like that. And then she actually came out to the facility where I'm working now, and spent about a week with us and the team, and just went over the simple principles of animal training and the things to look out for and animal behavior. And it was really just such an incredible experience for me, because she just makes you realize that whether it's a dolphin, whether it's an elephant, whether it's a fish, whether it's your colleague that you're trying to train, or your life partner, everything can be trained. And most of the time you just have to focus on the principles that we know work with animal training, like positive reinforcement, and also observe the animals and what they're offering you. Often an animal is giving you an answer or a clue to what they need or what they want. And you just have to be a bit more in tune with the animal to pick up on it.
Yeah, 100%. Although now that I think about it, going back to where you said training your colleague or your spouse or your partner, if they know they're being trained, I find they...
Oh no, you see, Ryne, you never tell them. Don't tell them.
No, they might just pick it up. And then if they pick it up, you're done for, because that's not going to work.
Well, I think then it depends on how good of a trainer you are.
Yeah, maybe I'm lacking in that type of training there, because I never get it right.
Yeah, it's always fun to apply it to people.
100%. I'm glad you connected with Gabby, because I know Gabby very well. We've sat on boards together, we've been in many meetings together, and she's really amazing. And being able to work with animals and understand behavior, and being able to show people how to work through behaviors, just really amazing. So I'm so glad you made that connection and that she was able to assist you.
Yeah, no, really. There's so many people out there. I mean, Ken Ramirez is another one from the States. He's an incredible person he's got a whole bunch of videos and YouTube channel, and also there's just so many resources out there, and so many people that are just so willing to share knowledge, which is, I think, really, really important in the industry that we're in.
Yeah, that's the best part about our industry, I think, is the fact that people are willing to share, and enable other people to be a part of it and learn from it. Because if we don't, then things are lost, and information is lost, and experience is lost when we move out.
For sure, yeah.
Or move on to other things.
Yeah.
So it's very important. But back to fish training.
Yeah.
We digress slightly. I want to know exactly how you set this up with a fish, and why would you want to train a fish? I know you're going to probably mention husbandry, but what is the reason for training a fish?
So to just give you some perspective, so when I started in my role at the facility I'm currently at, I was more on the bird side. So I was working more with, at that stage we had the penguins, and then we also had free flying birds in the same area. And I started playing around with animal training with the penguins, as I'm sure anybody would want to, because they're so cute. And then I eventually moved out of the penguin area, and then found myself in a completely different environment with fish, and started realizing the exact same principles that I had applied, with the birds, I could apply with the fish. And it was exactly as you mentioned, mainly for husbandry, like most of our training is. And it extends, when we talk about fish, we're not just talking about your bony fish, which, everybody's thinking about, like a goldfish, for example. But also there's a lot of other animals grouped into that category.
Actually, can I say, when you say bony fish, all I'm thinking about is the hake that I eat.
Unfortunately, everybody...
If it's bony or not bony.
I think every time I say that to somebody, they always automatically think of hake. I think it's because it's, like a staple fish and chips on the side.
Yeah, and we always worry about getting that loose bone somewhere along the way.
But no, so bony fish is basically all the different fish species that have a bony skeleton. And why it's important to understand this is because then we have elasmobranchs. And that's basically, instead of having bone, they have a cartilaginous skeleton. So that's your stingrays and your sharks. And unfortunately, they also often get grouped into this fish department, let me call it that. So, the stingrays need training, our sharks need training, our fish need training. And the most important kind of, training that I feel that I've implemented and been able to do is, it's almost like crate training that you would do with the animal. But I call it like basket training. And basically we have different baskets that we put into the coral exhibit, and the different fish have been trained through positive reinforcement to come over to the basket and come and swim inside the basket, and then they get reinforced with something that they enjoy, like food. And why this is so important in that particular exhibit is because we've got all these different coral species that are growing, and corals are very, very fragile. So it's quite difficult when we need to move an animal from that exhibit to then a large exhibit, because they've either outgrown the space, or we want to put another species in there that isn't compatible with the one that's already in there. And we would struggle on getting those animals to basically move from one exhibit to the other, because we'd have to put in all these different barrier nets, and of course the corals get broken in the process. So I sat there and I thought, well, why can't we just ask the fish to come over to us? If there's a positive relationship between us as the aquarists and the fish, and they know that we always seem to bring yummy snacks when we approach the side of the exhibit, why can't we then incorporate also a basket that they can be comfortable swimming in and out of, So should we need to move that animal at some stage, or it needs a health check, or it does get sick and it needs to be moved up to quarantine, why can't we use that training in a really positive way so that there's minimal stress on us as staff, but more importantly, there's minimal stress on the animal, and then the corals also don't get damaged. So that was kind of really the first bit of training I'd started doing with some of the fish that I was working with.
That's amazing. It's like a win-win situation there. No
Everybody
damaged
wins.
coral and less stressed fish. Everybody wins. You get a win. You get a win. I have a question on that. So you're putting a crate, which is obviously porous because you need the water to go in. Once you lift that fish out of the water, how much stress does that fish go into before it's put into another body of water for moving? And does it affect the behavior in the future? Or have you built up enough of a relationship with that fish that it doesn't, it's a small retraction from that bank account, and you can then just rectify it again by doing some more training sessions?
So generally what I would try and do with the fish is when they do come over to the basket, we will actually raise it so that the animal is basically secluded from the exhibit. So it's now in the basket and it can't choose to leave. And then we slowly but surely increase the amount of time that animal's in the basket so that they get comfortable and they get used to basically being in there for almost I don't want to say prolonged periods of time, but longer kind of little sessions where the fish is comfortable in there. When the animal is then moved, it will then get put into a net and then moved into a bucket, so that it's got a secure lid. But from what I've seen with the fish that we've done this with is we only really use that specific training in that exhibit. So once they move to another exhibit, for example, with the coral exhibits, most of those fish then move to our much larger ocean exhibits. And we haven't really been doing much of the basket training in there, but definitely something, now that you actually mention it now, would be very interesting to see if they actually remember that. Something relating to this is we had a clown surgeon fish, that was in the coral exhibit, and he actually didn't like the basket. So everything that we tried, we just couldn't get him to come over to it. He didn't want to swim into it. There was a lot of, I would say, mistrust in the basket, maybe because he saw his friends being moved. But one thing that he did enjoy was, we checked the water quality of all the exhibits with a special water quality probe. And basically it's a black tube that has little holes in that then cover the probe that goes into the water. And he would really enjoy playing with that in the mornings. So every morning when the person doing the water quality would come around, we would start observing that this fish would immediately come out and start playing with the water quality probe. And knowing this, with the basket situation, we needed to move him to the big exhibit. We actually made a decoy, so we made a one that he could play with, a water quality probe. So we took a pipe and we drilled the same holes in it, and we painted it black so that it looked identical. And we could then use that with a net to actually encourage him to come over to the side and go into the net using the probe, because that was
How cool is that?
that was his reinforcer, which was quite cool.
Wow. I love that. That is so cool. Going back to the crate, I'm just trying to think for you, or I don't know if you've thought of it, but when you're bringing the fish out of the water, are you bringing it out of the water in the crate and then it's obviously lying on its side for a period of time, or you're putting something in around the crate and bringing it up while it's still in water, if that makes sense?
No, so once they're basically in the crate, then we'll use a net from the crate, and they get netted from the crate and then moved in the net to another container.
Got you. Okay, so the crate is quite a big thing then. Oh, well, depending on what fish you
yes, yeah, depending on the species, yeah.
Got you. I'm Of course, me not working with fish, I'm just looking at a tiny little goldfish and thinking about it. So we're talking about normal general fish. Is there any other interesting species in the fish realm that you have worked with in those spaces?
So, I mean, now the predominant training that I'm doing is with our stingrays, which I think is probably my all-time favorite. They're just such incredible animals to work with. And also what's really fun about that training is we in the water with them. So, most of the training sessions we do is during, the public feed times, which happen during the day. And, we've started them on target. So basically we've got different species of stingrays and, we've split them up. So we've got a honeycomb stingray and ribbon tail rays. They prefer the warmer water that you'll find up KZN side. So they go to one target. And then our eagle rays and our blue stingray that you find more down the cooler side of the coast, they go to a different target. And they're in a mixed species exhibit. So we call it like a community exhibit. There's lots of different fish species in there. There's turtles. So just getting them basically coming over to the target was kind of the first goal. But now we've also got a separate area, on top of the exhibit, which is what we call the med pool. And basically it's a small area on the side that's linked to the exhibit that we can ask the animals to come over to. And it actually has a door, so we can open and close the door if we need to do a specific procedure on the animal, or if we want to do a training session with one particular fish. So my goals now have been more focused on actually getting the stingrays and the other fish comfortable coming into that space, so that we can use it for things like training and enrichment. And it's always just been so incredible to see, how sometimes the animals are so far ahead of us. A really good example with our stingrays is our round ribbon tail rays. And they're fairly new to the exhibit. They came from Ushaka in Durban, and, they were then trained on the yellow triangle, which is their target. And my next goal was for them to then come up to the medical pool. But the main problem we have is the medical pool sits at the top of the exhibit, and where most of their training happens is actually 6 meters below. So that's right at the bottom of the exhibit. And what we've had problems with in the past is the animals understanding that, when we put the target in at the top, it means actually we need you to come up there. And with the round ribbon tail rays, I thought, well, let me, just try this. Let's just hold the target over the side of the exhibit and see. Maybe they'll come up to us. Maybe they won't. And what we've had to do in the past is in slow increments, as any good trainer would, slowly move the animal up in the water column so that they get comfortable. But with these 2 round ribbon tail rays, we put the target in, and literally within a few minutes, they were like, hey, there's my target. I need to go over there. And I mean, you're talking about an animal that's literally in a exhibit that's 1.6 million liters of seawater. So it's a big exhibit.
Wow.
And they immediately see their target floating right at the top, and they know, okay, he's calling me. I need to come over to him. And instantly into the medical pool, completely happy and comfortable. So sometimes I think, we put a lot of our own feelings and emotions into what the animals are going to do versus what they actually end up doing.
Yes, it happens all the time. But those weren't trained or anything at Oshaka at all.
As far as I know, they weren't. And also if they were, they would have been on a different target. But as far as I know, they were just born there, and then they were moved to us.
However, I do feel like if they were exposed to training, they might be more open to it if they were exposed before they moved. But
could be, that would be an interesting thing to actually find out.
Yeah, it would be interesting. Now, if you're working with all of these rays, and you're saying it's a mixed species exhibit, you said you've got turtles and stuff also roaming around. Now, I've seen you doing the talks from inside the tank and doing the feeds. How do you deal with all of that happening without having other species coming in while you're doing a talk about, let's say, this ray and not wanting to come and join in? I mean, they're going to be offering behaviors as part of their training, which you would build up on. How do you control that? Are there other people in there with you if they got them on targets or stations?
So that's a great question. So whenever I'm working with the rays, there's always another diver with me. So there's always two of us. So generally I tend to always be near the window, and that means I'm always working with the honeycomb stingray, who's our largest stingray, and then our ribbon-tail rays. And then the other diver will be focusing on the eagle rays and the blue ray. And then depending on the day, the turtles, we will utilize the medical pool. So sometimes we'll have one of the turtles moved into the medical pool, and that will be closed, and there'll be enrichment sessions happening up there with the turtle team that look after the turtles. Other days we'll have a third diver join us in the water, and the turtles are also target trained to a different target. So it basically means we can all kind of focus on our own work, and each person is focusing on their group of animals. Look, it doesn't always go to plan, and we do sometimes have, I know you always talk about flyaways, while we have swimmerways. So where the turtle is, where turtles have veered off target, or the rays, they don't want to come over to you. So sometimes I feel like there's a lot of luck involved. But most of the time, I would say it's, organized chaos. Everything kind of tends to go to plan. And keeping in mind, while all this is going on, I'm also trying to talk and listen to the presenter that's outside. So it can be difficult. And it's a lot of multitasking.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, because as much as you are talking, you're also listening to what the presenter's saying on the outside of the exhibit, and you're having to deal with all of that going on. The only way I can put that into perspective for myself is when doing bird shows, I have an earpiece in, but there's not this constant talking all the time.
Yes,
it's only now and then with cues. So it must be very distracting with everything that's going on around you. But back to swim-offs or swimmaways, what do they do? Just go and hide behind a piece of coral?
So that is possible. Especially, I think that's what you always have to take into consideration is, and also not feel too bad about it, is some days there will be an animal that doesn't want to interact with you. And I think it's really important for us to be able to also realize, hey, that's okay. You don't want to spend some time with me today. That's perfectly fine. Sometimes I think it just hurts our feelings more than it does theirs. But also, it's very much on a trust basis. I mean, when I'm working with honey, for example, the big honeycomb stingray, I mean, we're swimming up along the window, or I'm trying to turn her around on the window so that we can show like her gill slits or where her nostrils are for the presenter that's on the outside. So we can actually work with the animals and move them around so that we can show, different parts of stingrays, which is really cool. And all of those exercises are really just trust exercises. I have to trust that the animal is going to be okay with me, and also read, her body language. And she's completely, trusting in me, that I am busy pointing out where her nostrils are, or where her gill slits are, or that, I'm going to move her into a different position, and that she's going to be safe, in that moment. And it's the exact same with the fish. One fish that comes to mind when you bring a swimmer away, into the conversation is...
I love that saying. I hope you're going to use this. Do you use this?
I think I'm going to have to start using it now. We can make it a hashtag. Hashtag swim
okay,
away.
Great. I'm all for it.
And we can get bumper stickers as well. I think that needs to be a thing.
I love that.
So one of the fish that always comes to mind with that is we had a brindle bass when I first started diving, in the exhibit that I'm talking about. Is the ocean exhibit. And brindle bass, I think they're one of my favorite fish. They just have so much personality, and this one's name was Buzz. And I just decided I don't even know why. I think it's because in the presentations we would talk about Buzz and how big he would get, because brindle bass, and they're part of the potato bass family. So they literally get like as big as sharks do. So they get massive. And he was
Is crazy.
He was just like, I don't know, a favorite for me. So I think when I eventually was underwater and they would allow me to, be underwater, I was like, you are going to be my friend. And I don't know how we're going to do this, but I'm going to be friends with you and you're going to like me somehow. So it was just, like almost like I naturally just selected this big fish that's, I'm going to decide to work with. And what I would do after the stingray feeds and after cleaning all the exhibit windows is I would just hang around, and initially I would just stay in one spot and just, watch what he would do. And then, over time I would start trying to swim next to him, which sometimes this is where the swim away gets involved, because some days he would just look at me like, what are you doing? And he would just move completely off, from where I was. And,
he's like, not today.
Yeah, like, what are you trying to do? You're not a fish. So I think it took about 6 months, and 6 months later, I found myself having a really good, relationship where I could, basically swim directly next to him. And he was quite comfortable with me getting closer and closer and closer. And I think what also worked in my favor was with, like you said, I do the presentation. So we've got it's a full face mask. It's got basically a microphone and the headset built in. So it looks very different to what all the other divers wear. And I think over time he started, identifying me as, hey, you're wearing the same gear. You always dress the same. So I know who you are. And that mask also had a bright yellow, frame around it. So inherently that basically became a target for him. And then literally like a few months later, he would actually come over to me during the stingray feeds, and he would just literally sit by me. And, I then started, introducing a hand signal. I can't actually remember what it was. I think it was either I would wave to him, or I would show a signal with my hands for him to open his mouth, and then I would offer him food. And what the brindle bass do, which is really impressive, is it's called buccal cavity feeding. So they open their mouth so quickly that it creates a vacuum, and it basically sucks the food that's in front of their face into their mouth cavity. And that was really impressive, for public to always see. So it was really cool that I could not only now spend time with this fish, but he had something that he knew if I did the hand gesture, there was going to be food, and he would open up his mouth for us. And that was just something that, built onto the educational value, of the presentation, which was really cool.
Wow. I'm just picturing this really large brindle bass. Well, what bass is it?
It's a brindle bass. He wasn't,
brindle bass.
He wasn't fully grown, and
right.
was actually, one of the smaller ones, but, yeah, still
in comparison to your size.
I would say probably the length of my arm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
I'm
decent
gonna have to
size.
send you a picture of Buzz.
You are going to have to. I need to see this large mouth open sort of picture. I have this vision in my eyes. That's just very weird situation.
Yeah, so I don't know.
So
Fish are friends. Fish are friends, not
friends,
food.
not foes. Or food. So did you ever have to try and get him to move away during those presentations at all, or was he just fine to just stay there in one spot?
I think that's something that I appreciated the most. So I'm saying this because this was many, many years ago, and unfortunately Buzz has passed on. But he just had this incredible way of just being so patient. He would just hover there and know, you know what, I'll get my moment when he's ready. but wouldn't come into the feed, wouldn't take food from us. He would just sit there and wait for us to basically give him his cue, which was quite amazing.
That's so cool. I think we may have mind-boggled some people listening to this podcast
I hope
about
so.
training fish. And on that note, if anybody has any questions for myself or Ayrton about fish training, I won't be able to help you on the fish training, but I will definitely pass the questions on to the expert. But if you do have any questions, please feel free to contact Animal Talk Podcast on any of the social media platforms. We can definitely have a look at it and send it to our guests, and they can answer back, or we can do some communication between the two if there's some really interesting stuff.
Definitely.
So please feel free to contact via the social media, or you can also contact us via email, which is animal.talk201@gmail.com. And I can also send that through to Ayrton, and you can have a look at any of those questions. But now we've got to the part of the podcast that I have been excited about, and maybe building it up quite a bit for everybody. And there is a very,
no
very,
pressure.
very, 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 yes, no pressure, very exciting announcement to make. And I'm glad Ayrton is here with me, because that is the whole point of this. And I am excited to make this announcement that I don't know how, but somehow I've managed to twist his arm and get him to agree to this, and he has fully agreed to this.
Twist the fin.
He is going to just twisted the fin. Ayrton King is now going to be a co-host on Animal Talk Podcast.
Da 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 da!
Yay! Yep, the cat is out the bag.
The fish is out the basket. That's what I like to say.
The fish is out. Oh, sorry. Fish is out the basket, and it has done a swim away, and we can't get it back. It's hidden now.
It's not target trained.
And it's not target trained. Yeah, so I'm really excited about this, and I couldn't think of anybody better to join me on this journey. I decided quite recently, in fact, about a week back, that I feel like a reboot of Animal Talk Podcast was needed. It has been 5 years, and started doing it during COVID, during the hard lockdown. And unfortunately, after my 10th episode, I was well into that craziness of breeding season with birds at the facility that I was at. And I'm sure, as you know, Ayrton, how the crazy breeding season can be. I had screaming chicks and having to rear them, and it was just crazy. So I stopped
it's a time that never ends.
100%. So I stopped the podcasting to deal with all of that, and never really picked it back up again. But
I also just can't believe that it's been 5 years.
No, that's crazy. I was thinking about it the other day, and I was absolutely crazy that it's 5 years. Well, almost 5 years. August will be 5 years of the first podcast went out.
It's fine. This year's going so fast. I mean, we're almost there.
Yeah, way faster than we want. So yes, I'm really excited to have you join the team of one to now make a team of two.
Yay, thanks, Ryan. I'm super stoked.
I'm really, really excited to see how we can get this podcast to move forward, and bring it to an extra level that we can put it at. And it's so important to have all of this information and be able to give that information out and enjoy it. And I really feel like having another co-host with me can really bring this a whole nother level. I can only attain it to when I was working at the bird show. We used to always do bird shows with one microphone and a presenter. So it was just one person talking, and they would talk about the bird and the behaviors it's doing. The bird goes off stage, and next bird comes on, you talk about that. And then we introduced the second mic, which is a second presenter, and it brought the show to a whole different level. There's a lot of bantering between those two presenters. There's a lot more information, and it just makes it a little bit more enjoyable. So I'm looking forward to that. It also means that we don't always have to have a guest, which can be quite challenging.
We can just banter between ourselves.
Exactly. That was the whole plan. Because the whole thing about it is sometimes it's very difficult to get hold of guests. Time zones, especially with overseas guests. It's very difficult to plan all of that and make it all work. And when it does work, it's great. But for us to want to be able to be a podcast that goes out quite regularly, it would be nice for us to talk about topics, just the two of us talking about those topics to everybody. And then it's our voices that everybody recognizes, and then we bring those guests in. So I'm really, really excited about that. And Ayrton, you now have to tell us exactly how you feel about it.
I'm really excited about it. I think you also just highlighted for me, the aquarium and zoological industry is a very important industry, and there's so many people out there that are in the same industry as us. But often, we find that nobody really speaks or communicates that well with each other. So it's really great to have a platform where you and I can chat about stuff, or we can have different guests. And, whether you're doing your morning cleaning at work, for us, it's, before opening, we're always scrubbing exhibits and getting everything nice and clean. And then we have just music on in the background, or we listen to podcasts, or we listen to YouTube videos. So it's something that I'm hoping that other keepers can also use while you doing your paperwork, or, all of that not so fun stuff. You can just have it playing in the background, and it's going to hopefully bring people together, through different topics. And what I'm most excited for is, just sharing knowledge, because when we share knowledge, to each other, it's not just benefiting us as the keepers, but also benefiting the animals that we wake up every morning to go and look after. Because I so often find that, in your own facility, you're dealing with, it might be a training issue, it might be an animal husbandry issue, and you trying to wrap your brain around it with your team. But, meanwhile, another facility's had the same issue, and they've either found a better solution, or they're going through the same problem and they also need help. So it's a great opportunity for us to just connect. And when we do connect like that, ultimately we improve the lives of the animals that we look after. And that's, what more can you ask for?
I 100% agree. I think it's one of those things that if you ever been to a conference, a keepers conference, a trainers conference, an educators conference, and you connect with people that are like-minded to you, you make connections that last a lifetime. And I think Ayrton, you and I have made a connection long time ago. I think it was a keepers conference, and a few other things where we're like-minded, and I think that's what has kept us as friends and colleagues in the industry. I've unfortunately stepped out of the captive industry. Maybe I should say for now.
For now, yeah.
And I'm more into
semicolon.
More into the wildlife. Yes, semicolon, waiting, let's see. But for now, I'm out of that, and I'm more into the wildlife side and conservation, and on a small section of the job that I do now, which is also quite exciting and challenging. But now opening up and rebooting Animal Talk podcast, I don't have that insight into the captive side as much anymore. I keep myself as how can I say, part of it as best I can, but I'm not immersed in it as I would be if I was working at a facility like you are. So I think you'll bring that other extra level of expertise and new things that are coming out.
No pressure
really
again.
Important. No pressure, but you can do this. But I think that's really the whole key to this as well, is just making sure that we're diverse and we're trying to get that information out there, which I'm really excited about.
Awesome.
And there's a few other things, there's going to be a logo change, which you guys will see soon. And there'll be a few character things changing. And maybe hint, stepping into different realms of podcasting, video and all of that type of stuff. So we'll see how that goes and how we can get that working. But yeah, I'm sure Ayrton and I will work through that, and you guys will be able to experience it as we go through that change and that change period. So I'm super excited. If no one noticed, I'm really excited.
I can literally hear your excitement through my earpieces right now.
Yeah. I have goosebumps, which is like that goosebump moment that we always talk about our audience needs to have when they are experiencing an animal behavior or something, so that they can feel a part of it and wanting to protect it. I'm having that goosebump moment of just feeling that real excitement about what I'm experiencing right now. So I'm really happy and really keen. And I'm so grateful for you to say yes, because I was really worried you were going to say, I'm going to be too busy at work. I don't think I'm going to be able to fit this in. I was like, oh, no. But you said yes, so I grabbed you on that, and there's no going back. Sorry.
It's a done deal.
Done deal.
Swim away.
No swim away. You are in that crate and you're stuck.
Well, I'm really glad to be here.
That's great. So if anybody wants to communicate with Animal Talk Podcast, we have lots of places where you can contact us. We are all over social media. We have Instagram. We have Facebook page. We have a Facebook group. We're now going to be going on to YouTube. And there's so many places you can contact us. Also, you can send us an email. Like I mentioned before, and I'll say it again, it's animal.talk201@gmail.com. And you can then send through any questions, any topics that you would like to discuss. That would really help us. Let us know what you guys would want to hear about. And we can see if we can arrange people to talk about those topics and see how we can make that happen. And maybe we can even have an email session inside the podcast with Ayrton and I answering some questions or some
like
emails,
questions and answers. That would be cool.
Go through. Yeah. So it's quite exciting. That's a whole different level that I haven't stepped into or got involved in. So I'm quite excited to be able to do that.
Fingers crossed. Let's see how we go.
Fingers crossed. Now, I normally end off my podcast with my little slogan. I don't know if Ayrton has thought of his little send-off speech, but my little send-off speech, I'll say it, and then you're welcome to do your side. So, everybody, keep safe, and remember, animals are our passion. Goodbye, everyone.
Wow, so I have actually been thinking about my sign-off, and my sign-off, dun dun dun, is one that I'm sure you've heard before, but it is very simple, and it puts everything into perspective for me. And that is that
You're swimming away now.
Oh, I'm swimming away. No.
Yeah.
My sign off is going to be our quality of care is their quality of life. And that's what it comes down to for us. Yeah.
That's the best. Thanks so much, Ayrton.
Cheers. Thanks so much, Ryne.
We'll be chatting real soon. Thanks. Ciao. Bye.
We'll be chatting a lot more. Bye. Stay frequent your post.
Can we? Now I've got a cat scratching. Okay. This is a household of many animals. Please excuse this. Okay. All right.
Do you have a killer whale there?
Well, I might just kill a whale if I'm... I don't know what's going on. Please give me 2 seconds. There's like a scratching sound. Thank you so much. Excellent. So glad. There was a spoon in the sink, and the cat decided it was whatever was on it is yummy, and it's time for him to start scratching and clawing at it and trying to get whatever's on the spoon off, which was making a
enrichment.
Yes. I think the noise is gone now. Right, where was I? Okay.